The New Statesman is it's a political and cultural weekly magazine, and nowadays it's also a website. So we have a powerful news and comment website which runs alongside the magazine. And I'm editor of the New Statesman. I have been editor since the end of 2008. And this year, 2013, the New Statesman celebrated its centenary. So that's quite an achievement for a small but very distinguished magazine. I studied English and philosophy, and both subjects are good for journalism because they're generalist subjects, which require writing, reading, obviously, analytic skills, the ability to argue, to articulate positions both verbally and in writing. Since graduating and becoming a journalist, and a journalist of a certain kind, initially when I left university in 1989, I wanted to be a literary journalist, writing reviews, essays, interviewing writers, writing about writing. So it was really in some ways a continuation of what I'd been doing at university, but I was being paid for it. So, and in that sense, that discipline of reading something, thinking about it, analysing it, writing about it, submitting an essay, having the essay assessed, going away thinking about the essay, how I could make it better. All of that is superb preparation for the kind of journalism that I ended up doing. As I said, I graduated in '89, and as a student in my last year, I went to Southampton University. The only thing I applied for was the news traineeship at the BBC. Back then, they used to have 12 graduate trainees, and you'd be trained, if you were lucky enough to get on the scheme, you'd be trained to be a broadcast journalist. And as you can imagine, thousands of applicants, high-quality applicants from all over the country and beyond. I was arrogant enough to, and perhaps deluded enough to think I might be one of those 12. I applied, I had an interview, got through the first phase, sat a test, got through the second phase, but fell at the final hurdle. I think I got down to the last 20 or something. But I wasn't one of the chosen 12, but actually a girlfriend of mine, a girl who happened to be a friend rather than a girlfriend in the way that we might understand it, got on the scheme and has since gone on to become a very successful BBC journalist. So I was a blow to me at that point. So, and I had nothing else to go to. So I graduated. I had some money, some funding through the British Academy to do a PhD, but chose not to do that. And then I just kind of made my own way. Local newspapers, I did some teaching, I wrote freelance magazines, and then eventually I got my first job, a good job actually, on a distinguished publishing magazine called The Bookseller in 1992. And this was a magazine for the publishing industry, so a trade publication, but one of some standing. It had been owned by the same family since the Victorian period. And it brought me closer to what was then Fleet Street, to newspapers. So that interface between journalism, book publishing, and newspapers. If you imagine two circles of a Venn diagram in a shaded area, in the middle was where I was working, so it was perfect for me. So that was my first proper job in my early to mid-20s. And from there I got a job on the Times, the daily newspaper, as a staff feature writer. So I was on my way. With the media, and it's changed a lot now for your generation because of the web. You can imagine this is pre-web. I'm old enough to be pre-web. How did it happen? I was on a reasonably high-profile business title. So I was mixing with journalists, occasionally writing freelance for newspapers and magazines, and my name was getting out there. And then you have to be a little bit tenacious, a bit pushy. You meet the right people, you talk to them, you invite them in to give interviews at schools and things like that. And I eventually met a couple of people, and one of them offered me a job. So it was quite a big step up, actually, to go from a trade publication, a bookseller, to the Times, one of the most distinguished newspapers in the world. But I made that jump. But so in that sense, there was luck involved as well as talent and tenacity. You, as a journalist, because it's not a profession, such as you're not acquiring a body of professional knowledge such as medicine or the law or becoming a highly skilled engineer, or you're really living a little bit off your wits. You have to push a bit, contacts. So yeah, a little bit of youthful arrogance as well, for sure. I first and foremost see myself as a working journalist. I've written a couple of books. Again, as a young man, I had ambitions because I'd so enjoyed reading and writing about fiction. I really thought I wanted to write fiction myself. But I found that I was never, the wanting to write fiction was greater than the actual writing of the fiction, if that makes sense. So when I had spare time, I was actually writing journalism. I think I wrote 3 or 4, maybe 4 or 5 short stories around the time I graduated. I remember the last of those, I sent them to a publisher who had been quite encouraging about one of them, and he sent it back to me by return of post. I mean, he liked it that much. Clearly he hated it. So I stopped writing short stories. I did write a novel and it was published, but I only ever wrote it in sort of spare moments. It was not something that I really gave my all to. And many years later I wrote a second book, a sort of memoir about sport, politics, my father, and I think that book is something that I'm very pleased with. It was a book I really wanted to write. But I didn't write it because I wanted a career as an author. It was just something that I felt the urge to write. I was fortunate enough to get a decent contract for it from a publisher, so that was a happy experience. The novel less so, because although I don't regret publishing it, I don't think I gave my best in the novel. And but also I learnt enough about myself through writing it to know that I didn't want to dedicate my life and my career to trying to write fiction, because too many of my friends have done that, and some of them are good novelists, and even some of them have won some quite distinguished prizes as young novelists, but they've gone nowhere. It's extremely hard, A, to write a very good novel, and then B, to make a good living from it. So I think one of the things about sort of growing up and experience and developing in your career is that you learn your limits, you learn what you should be doing, what you can do. So there's often a disjunction between what you dream of doing and what you want to do when I'm your age, and what you realise that you can do. So 2 books. I'll probably write another, but at the moment I concentrate on being an editor and writing journalism. For example, if you're a news reporter, you write within a rather rigorous and disciplined style. I mean, you're not going to fill your reports with kind of an expansive style, adjective-rich sentences or extravagant writing. You need to get that information down as simply and directly as possible and tell that story. So yeah, I can do that and did do that in my earlier career. And in a sense, it's a good skill to learn. And many people, after doing media studies, they go on to, they might go on to a postgraduate course to study journalism or broadcast journalism or whatever it is. Because once you develop those basic skills, they never leave you. That will give you kind of an unbreakable style, as it were. So if you're trying to get a story across down the phone with bombs exploding around you, you can do that. You only have to look at the big newspapers in this country, and indeed the United States, and they're all losing huge sums of money. I mean, the Guardian is losing about 40 million a year, the Times loses money, the Independent loses money. Until recently, the New Statesman, which is much smaller, we were losing money. The web is obviously a massively transformative presence, but it's how you somehow use the web and that ability that it enables you, that gives you your content to reach so many more people so easily. But how do you get those readers of your content or your journalism to pay for that content? I mean, that's a great challenge when so many newspaper groups or media groups chose to give it away for free. And I'd be interested to know how many people here actually buy a daily newspaper. I mean, nobody. Whenever I go out to speak at schools or various places, I ask that question. Very few people now are buying papers or even magazines. But it's very expensive to produce journalism. I mean, you've got editors, writers, sub-editors, designers. some of these big groups have bureau all over the world, and how do you have a revenue stream that supports the journalism? Often these publications are propped up by wealthy people or big media groups, but it's a real challenge, I think, and it's a really difficult moment for many media groups. We're doing well because we've been able to revitalise this title. It's got a great history. We've only got a small staff, so we're controlling our costs better, and we're able to get our material out there through our website, and that's growing very rapidly. So the more users, the more visitors to our website that we have, we can sell advertising against that. We're getting more advertising in the magazine. More people are buying the magazine. It's only a small circulation title, but more people are buying it, so our circulation is not going down at a time when many print titles, their circulation is going down. So we're in good shape. Partly that's because of the web. That's helped us. That gets our material out there. So if we have like the recent Russell Brand issue, which loads of people are interested in, many of the people visited our website to find out what was going on for the first time. So that was good. I mean, the Guardian have had a series of extraordinary scoops: Edward Snowden in the US, the phone hacking investigation, the WikiLeaks revelations, but they're still losing huge amount of money. Well, at a time when probably more people than ever before are reading the Guardian's journalism. So it's a very, very interesting and delicate balance at the moment. We produce sort of 48 issues a year, and many of them are very solid, cerebral, deliberative. So every now and then, I think, as editor, since I took over in 2000, I introduced the idea of having a guest editor, bringing someone in, someone who's renowned in their field, but perhaps has strong political views, and then you collaborate with them to produce a one-off special. And we've had really brilliant success with these guest edits. We chose Russell because he has a huge following among the young. He's a good writer. He's smart. He's funny. And he can reach an audience that we couldn't reach, and indeed so it proved. We set up an interview with Russell with Jeremy Paxman on BBC Newsnight. Jeremy's a bit like a sort of 18th century vicar. He's kind of, sort of disdainful of a figure such as Brand, and that interview became a viral sensation. Is that not a mixed metaphor? And I think it's been viewed on YouTube by over 9 million people. And that's significant reach for the New Statesman. Subsequently, we've had record traffic numbers on our website, and people visiting the website, people buying the issue. It's a fantastic success. And I've made the New Statesman. I've repositioned it politically, so it's much more plural and sceptical than it perhaps once was. It's not the house journal of the Labour Party, perhaps, as it was once perceived as being. So it's much more open to ideas. Therefore, collaborating with Russell, because it was risky, because it may have reaffirmed an idea that we're a bunch of sort of left-wing headbangers. Some of them are, some of my staff are, but most of us aren't. I'm not saying Russell's a headbanger, but he's calling for world revolution. That's pretty extreme. I mean, as someone once said to me, there's nothing more boring than the Labour Party. And you don't really, I mean, much of what they do or attempt to do is progressive, but equally, why as a publication would you wish to, I don't know, why would you wish to be that party's house journal? I mean, for me as editor, that's not interesting. It's not like being tethered to a dying animal, but it's not a good position for the New Statesman in my view. Nevertheless, we support many of Labour's more progressive policies. But this was a party that supported George Bush in the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan. Had a desperately unbalanced economy. Why would we be a cheerleader for such a party? I think you need to have a sense of what you want to do, what interests you, areas. What are your areas of expertise or special interest? You need to be tenacious, hardworking. You need to read widely, consume as much media as you can. Become adept at multimedia as you are now: video, web, audio, social media. I mean, there's so many fantastic outlets now for media. It's not just print. and be quite single-minded, I think. Above all, tenacious.